can I do with my fingers? We're impatient and we don't want to wait that long. Don't be weak. What do cats see when their eyes are closed? I'm gonna break my fingers. Hello and welcome back to Zach Does It. In case you think I'm winking at you, I'm not. I promise it's because of the sun. It's pretty bright. It's also the winter, so it's very low in the sky, but I think the lighting is good, so we're going to work with it. In today's episode, we are going to give some tender loving care to the metal on the car. We spent the past couple episodes focusing on the plastic trim, the carpet, the interior of the car even, but all of these metal surfaces also need some love. In fact, if you look at some of these, they're pretty grody. They've got a lot of built up residue. They've got some baked on insulation material and other bits and bobs. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of everything in this car. If you notice, even these painted pieces have some rust where you get some metal on metal action, maybe where the bolts attach or where it's just attached to the car in general. So to take care of these, we will get all of the superficial debris and rust and other contaminants off the surface of this using a wire wheel and a drill. Then we'll apply some mineral spirits, we'll wipe it all down, make sure that it's a very clean surface. Depending on the texture of it, we may even take some sandpaper to it just to give it a little final touch before using a self-etching primer. That way we're guaranteed to get a really good base foundation. After that, we'll take a black spray paint and we'll paint them all black. Most of these pieces you're not going to see, but we at least want to put something on them to further protect them. Primer's not going to do a very good job protecting against rust because that's not what it's designed for. The good news, though, is that we don't need to worry about quality per se, because again, no one's really going to see these pieces. I don't need to put a nice clear coat on. I won't be wet sanding. If there are runs, I'm not going to be too worried about it, because at the end of the day, most of this gets covered by some carpet or some trim or something else so that it's out of your view. So let's dive in. Okay, so it's time to take it easy. We just got a hell of a workout getting the rust and the paint and all the other garbage off of the metal. Pry open. Oh, can I do it with my fingers? Don't be weak. I'm gonna break my fingers. Okay, I'll be back. Wow, that was really easy with a pair of pliers. Okay, now that we did all the hard work and all we have left is some shiny metal, you'll notice there's still some oxidation, some black stuff on here, but what's important is that the surface rust is all gone. The primer I got is self-etching, so it's going to really like dig into the metal, but it's not going to convert rust. There's different types of primer for that, but because these are small pieces and I am able to get rid of the rust, I decided to go with the self-etching primer instead of the rust converting primer. So we got rid of all that, put some elbow grease into it, got a hell of a workout, almost lost our shirt, but we didn't. So now it's time to make sure that these are now dust and dirt and residue and oil free. We are wearing our gloves because any oils that are on our skin that can get on the metal and will then impact the primer and the paint, and we just won't get the same result that we would if it was perfectly clean metal. The other important reason is that you don't want a lot of these types of chemicals to get on your hands, even if they kind of are safe or they're not super dangerous. It's really just a good idea to wear some sort of protection. And then lastly, this is sharp metal, so every little bit counts. If I cut myself, I'm a little bit less likely to do it with some rubber gloves on. So let's get to it. We'll just soak the microfiber cloth a little bit, and all we're really doing is wiping it down. It's not really going to look any different. You probably won't be able to tell. I certainly can't tell. There are some pieces on here that are very dusty, so maybe we'll be able to tell the difference in those, but we'll see. The important piece, though, is that you're using a microfiber cloth or a paper towel that does not shed. You don't want all the little fibers to come off, and then you're left with more of a mess than when you started. So just be aware, not all towels, not all rags are created equal, so make sure you're using something a little bit better quality when you're doing this step. And that's about it. You are done. On to the next piece. It's times like this that I like to let my mind wander and just wonder things. But I know a lot of other people whose minds wander as well. One of my wife's friends, in fact, posited a very interesting question some time ago, and he asked, "What do cats see when their eyes are closed?" I don't know. I don't know where that question came from. I don't know what brought it to my mind, but if you have an answer, if you know what cats see when their eyes are closed, would you mind letting me know? Give me a hint. I'll be sure to pass it on to my friend. Beautiful. These pieces all came out great. This piece, though, it's got a lot of nooks and crannies. If I really cared, I could probably get in here with like a Dremel with a much smaller wire brush, but this is also a piece that goes underneath the center dash. Here's the F, so pointing forward. Imagine I'm the front of the car. Here's where the shift knob is, and here's where your stereo deck is. So the big plastic console just sits here. You're not going to see this. The self-etching primer should do a good enough job getting a base coat on, and then when I apply the paint, that should do a good enough job holding it together, and then ultimately the goal is just to make sure that no moisture gets onto this piece. So that's really all we're doing for something small like this that isn't perfect. We're just making sure that we're protecting it against future rust and getting rid of as much of the loose stuff that we can. You might have noticed some of these other pieces that are painted, I didn't strip them down all the way. In fact, I left an okay layer of paint on the surface. And ultimately, we're priming on top. We've got a self-etching primer. It doesn't really matter that there's an extra layer of paint. If anything, it might provide an extra layer of protection. But really, we just needed to rough up the surface and clean it off so that the primer sticks better. And ultimately, the new paint. So, word to the wise, if you are going to be doing something like this, make sure that you check ahead with the weather so that you've got a day or maybe 2 days, especially since we're going to be painting after this. We want to make sure that we're not going to end up leaving these bare metal pieces exposed to any sort of moisture or the elements for an extended period of time. Now, it's totally okay if they sit for a few days. It's not really going to cause any problems. Worst case scenario, we just go over it again with the wire brush. So we can fix any problems that might arise. But hopefully, with any luck, we'll be able to take care of it today and at least get the primer coat on so that tomorrow we can get the paint on. And even this microfiber cloth is starting to fall apart. So even when you get the good stuff, still has a chance of causing problems. And in case you thought that these pieces were already clean, the color of this rag should be evidence enough that there was a bunch of gunk and dust and residue still left on these pieces that we needed to clean off. And I suspect this is going to be one of the dirtiest pieces. I saw a lot of dust on it before when I was done grinding it off. I'd imagine a lot of it's the paint that we were able to scrape off. Yeah, there's that dust. You can even see it as we just run across that. Oh, that is gross. Well, it's not that gross. Let's get a little bit more and we should be done. You may have noticed while I was taking this piece apart that I took the insulation and then the plastic or the rubber backing off of it. I shouldn't necessarily need that. It's really just there to help with some heat protection and some noise reduction. But I was proactive and I did order some Dynamat and a Dynapad so that I can replace most, if not all, of the soundproofing and insulation that was on the car with something new. And ideally, the Dynamat is going to do a really good job helping soak up some of the vibrations in the chassis and in some of these metal pieces. In fact, one of these pieces had a gasket or like a foam seal around the entire thing to help with that vibration and that metal-on-metal contact. So there's a good chance that with all the extra foam tape we're going to have, that I'm going to go ahead and do the same, plus the Dynamat, plus the Dynapad, and we're going to see what we can do to the ride quality and how noisy it is inside the Miata. I'm not expecting too much because honestly, I think most of the road noise at this point is coming from the soft top. It's got a tiny little bit that sticks up above the lip of where the windshield cross member is, and it is so loud. In fact, I think it might actually be quieter driving with the top down. I'll have to get a decibel meter just to check that out. And that, I think, about does it. Let's put our dirty rag to the side, and we have a second rag, which is important because we want to make sure that we wipe off as much mineral spirits as we can. It'll eventually kind of go away on its own, but we're impatient and we don't want to wait that long. So we're going to go ahead and wipe everything down now in that reverse order that we just finished cleaning. Well, that about does it for this episode. I'm trying to keep each episode relatively small and bite-sized, and cleaning the metal ended up taking a lot longer than I was expecting. So we'll finish that up in the next episode, and then we'll get to priming and painting, and even later we will get back to putting Mama back together. I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting putting everything back in its place. But that about does it for me. Another episode will come out next Thursday, and I'll see you then.